Greetings and welcome to my latest live stream. Gordon Causey, as it always is, and as is often the case, Candy the Wonder Pup, who doesn't want affection, doesn't want to be pet. She just wants what's in my hand, as you can tell. So before I can get really rolling, let's take care of Candy. Shake me. Right now. Speak, speak. She gets so excited she can't bark. She's a nuts. Speak, speak. Okay, that's a little better. And now Candy has been looked after, and I see that I have at least now one person has shown up, and I have a guess as to who it might be. Uh, Today is we're in the dying minutes of Saturday, the 24th of May, 2025. And sorry for the lateness of the stream. Once again, I was working today. I often work on Saturdays. I work in a retail environment now. If you're new to my station, on this video might get some new viewers. You know, who is this guy? Who is Gordon Causey, sometimes called Gordy Canuck? Who is he? 58 years of age, born in 1966, living in, as referenced by the picture over my shoulder there, uh, living in Ontario, Canada, in the southeastern portion of this province. I'm about 150 kilometers east of the CN Tower down there. I live in a part of Ontario called Northumberland County, farming area. I'm far away from the GTA, from the Greater Toronto Area, but not far enough, as I often like to say. I enjoy being out of the big smoke. I like Toronto. Toronto is a lovely city, but it's just for my taste, it is simply too busy. As I've gotten older, I find that I prefer the rural uh, lifestyle to that of the urban lifestyle. And this is definitely rural. There are more apple trees in the town where I live than there are people. So let's get into this topic. But even before I do that, you're welcome to like, you're welcome to share, you're welcome to subscribe. And I was just saying a little bit about me. Uh, Again, born 1966, Canadian, an individual who spent 10 years growing up as a Canadian in the United States. When I was about 6 months old, we moved from Canada down to New York, and then later we made our way to New Jersey, and then later to Portland, Oregon, with times in between in Canada. And I spent about 10 years total living in the United States. But from the age of 12 forward, I bleed maple syrup, for lack of a better word, for lack of a better expression. I have I have my coffee going. Candy is go lay down. She's got to get into stuff. Border collies are just so smart and curious and gotta get into something. They need something to occupy their mind. Oh, so we're gonna talk tonight. Oh yeah, I keep I'm having trouble focusing this evening. I apologize. Um, I was in the Canadian military up until 2021, and this is going to play into it. The reason that I left the military in June of 2021 was because of my, because of all things COVID. I knew in December of 2020 that the COVID vaccines, or so what I refer to as the so-called vaccines, that they would be mandated on members, that we would be forced to take them if we wanted to stay in the army, and that refusing the jab could be construed. I envisioned it being potentially construed as refusing a lawful order, which could lead to something like a court martial. And so I decided to put in my voluntary release. I asked to be released from military service in December of 2020, basically immediately after the jabs were authorized. And this is going to play into things with respect when I talk about flat Earth, because um, the consensus view in December of 2020, January, February, March 2021 is that the jabs were gonna save the world. And that anyone who didn't get it, they were often said, "Oh, I bet you're a member of the Flat Earth Society too, because you were bucking conventional wisdom." And one thing I found out in getting pretty much waist deep into the anti-COVID community, for lack of a better word, for lack of a better expression, is that I encountered for the first time a number of people who do not ascribe to what I guess is the heliocentric model of the universe. Uh, there are two models, as far as I can tell. There's the heliocentric, sun-centered, with the Earth revolving around the sun, and then there's the geocentric model to which flat earthers subscribe, and the geocentric model holds that the sun rather circles around a disc-shaped planet or dish-shaped Earth. And I never had given it too much thought before COVID came along, this notion of a flat Earth. But those who ascribe to this model are quite passionate often. They are all in on believing that we have been lied to for our entire lives, for generations. We've been lied to about the very nature of our existence in this universe. And to put a fine point on things, I am not a flat earther. But at the same time, I don't have universal disdain. I'm not totally dismissive of those who do ascribe to the geocentric model. Uh, I find there's a tendency for individuals to want to mount their thrones, to want to put themselves above everyone else, and to say, "Oh, he's one of those flat earthers." And you would see that used. It was a form of gaslighting that happened during COVID. People would say, "Oh, you're not getting the vaccine. What do you believe in a flat Earth too?" And they would use that as a gaslighting term. And man, there's gonna be a lot to unpack here because I have given it some thought. Ultimately, I still do believe in a round or spherical Earth. I pulled out my globe here, although I don't think this is exactly an accurate representation of the Earth, obviously, because everyone knows the Earth isn't ultimately, it's not flat like this. It's bumpy as hell. I've been through the Rocky Mountains. I've been in the Appalachians. I have never been to the Alps, but I trust that they are there. I trust that the Himalayas are there. So there's nothing flat about this earth. We've got high points, low points. We've got hills, mountains, uh, plateaus, mesas, and then likewise we have valleys, canyons, ridges that go deep. So how flat is this earth? What's the general shape? I do believe it's spherical. Why do I believe that? Well, number one, when I was around 8 or 9 years of age, I was a member of the Cub Scouts in the US. I was a little Cub Scout and an amateur astronomer with a very high powerful telescope. One of our little things to do, one of the things that we did while I was a Cub Scout was to go to this gentleman's backyard. And it probably would have been August or September of 1975. And we looked through this. It was quite a large telescope. It was probably the business end of it. I'm such a scientist. Well, the was probably about that big, and we saw the moon rather close. At one point, we zoomed right on pretty much to the surface of the moon, and you could see, though, when we scaled back, that it was spherical in nature. It was roundish in nature. Likewise, we looked at Saturn, and you could see that Saturn was round, and we looked at Mars, and you could tell that Mars was a sphere. And so it seems logical to me to assume that if the If the moon is round, and according to my observations, it most certainly is, and if Mars and Saturn, the two planets that I have seen, I don't think that this amateur astronomer with his high-powered telescope in his backyard, I don't think he was part of some global conspiracy to uh, alter my worldview. But to be in fairness to those who believe in flat Earth, just because everything else is spherical in the universe, all these other heavenly bodies, uh, sometimes difficult to come up with the vocabulary that you need to discuss something like this in a fair and reasonable fashion. I don't want to offend anyone. That's not my intention. I don't want to offend those who ascribe to the flat Earth model, and but I don't want to be disrespectful for those equally who do not believe in it. Uh, Ultimately, so that there's one reason why I believe in the geocentric model. It just strikes me as intuitive that if the planets that I've seen two, Saturn and Mars, spherical when I looked at them through that high powered telescope, and the moon. If all these other heavenly bodies are spherical in nature, why wouldn't the Earth be? But again, just because they are doesn't mean we have to be. Uh, I'm gonna go through a lot here. There was a comedian I saw many years ago. Not that many, actually, doesn't matter. This comedian was on Jimmy Fallon or one of those shows. I think it was Jimmy Fallon, Tonight Show. And he said to Jimmy Fallon that people don't know what they know. Jimmy Fallon, people don't know what they know. And he said, trust me, I'm going somewhere with this. And he said, if you ask people to write down 100 things that they know, and then point to each one, go through them one by one on the list and ask them, how do you know that? 90% of the time, they'll just say, someone told me. Someone told me. And when it comes to, what do we know? I know that I might say that I know that the earth is spherical. And how do you know that, Gordon? Well, someone told me. That is to say, I haven't done any research on it. I've done no investigation. I've just accepted what has been handed to me by authoritative figures, by the educational system. Here's what they told me. Okay. And I've over the years, I've done a little bit of research, and knowing that I was going to do this video, I refreshed myself. And there's a video that gets shared every now and again. I believe it's scientist astronomer Carl Sagan talking about how the name is pronounced Aristophanes, someone who lived about 200 years before Christ, a Greek philosopher, scientist, mathematician. And what he did is he conducted an experiment, and he took 2 points on the same line of longitude, or longitude, if you like that pronunciation better. One was Alexandria. Danny is here. God bless my friend. He he took 2 points on the same line of longitude, about 300 kilometers apart from one another. One was in Alexandria in Egypt, and another one was up, I think, equally in Egypt, present day Egypt, near what is today Aswan. I think it's called Cyan or something like that, back in the ancient world. And what he did is he put up two poles, and he had a colleague, and they both determined that they would measure the shadow given off by the sun at noon on the solstice, on the longest day of the year, on what would be on our calendar, June 21st. So they measured it, and it was the difference in the shadow given off at those two locations that led Aristophanes, if I'm pronouncing his name right, to conclude that the earth was spherical in nature. And further, they say that he was able to, with surprising accuracy, we are told, to determine the circumference of planet Earth. And Danny's asking a question. And I'm not sure I'm understanding what you're typing, my friend. How did they communicate back 500 MI? Could you type that out again so I can better understand what you're saying? I've had that question. This is the point I was getting at, is that so what happened is 2,300 years ago, uh, 2,000 years ago, two or 2,300 years ago, they conducted the Aristophanes conducted this experiment, and we just accept it. No, I certainly myself have not conducted that same experiment. I don't know anyone else who has conducted that experiment. People might say, well, why should I conduct an experiment? It was already done, and Aristophanes, we can trust him. We can trust him. Danny's asking the questions. The question, how did they communicate? You know, it's not like they had cell phone technology or walkie-talkies or a landline. Okay, are we ready to start our measurement? We trust that Aristophanes and his assistant 500 miles away. I don't think it was quite 500 miles, but maybe it was, whatever the distance between Aswan and Alexandria is. How do we know empirically that they both measured that shadow at the precise exact same time? Reasonable question to ask. Now we live in the modern era. We could conduct the same experiment at exactly the same time and ensure that it's being done at the same time. Uh, And so I think that's answering your question, Danny. Or yeah, and I know that question that you're putting out there is somewhat rhetorical. How did they communicate? 500. The story is that they both determined, okay, you're going to go to Cyan, or I'm going to be in Cyan, and you're going to be at Alexandria. We're both going to put a pole up of this height, 6 foot tall pole. I don't know the height of the pole, but we'll say a 6 foot tall pole, and you're going to measure the shadow at your location, and I'll measure the shadow at my location, and we'll do it exactly at noon. Were they using digital quartz watches? There's all kinds of questions you might want to ask about the experiment that was conducted. I did check into one thing. I was curious to know Alexandria and Cyan, Aswan, are they at the same elevation? If I'm standing in the Dead Sea, and at noon on the solstice, I put up a 6 foot tall pole to measure the shadow. And then if I do the same at the summit of one of the Himalayan mountains, like Mount Everest, that is at a much higher elevation, Dead Sea is below sea level, what's going to be the impact? And as it turns out, the distance between an object and the sun does it does impact the size of a shadow. I believe it's the greater the distance between the sun and an object, the greater the shadow, the closer they get together, the less the shadow. And as it turns out, Alexandria is only about 5 meters above sea level, whereas the Cyan, or however you pronounce it, up near Aswan, that the elevation is close to 200 meters above sea level. That's quite a significant distance. A house, rather a building, probably is about four or so meters per story of a building, of an office tower. Each story would be 4, maybe 5 meters. Let's go with 4. So now we're looking at if you had a 50-story building in front of you, that would be roughly, I imagine, the height difference between one pole, the pole in Cyan would be like a 50-story building higher up, closer to the sun than the pole sitting in Alexandria. Let's see what Danny's writing. Um, and just getting on to what Danny says, he's writing, if they're 500 miles away back then, how were they able to communicate what they saw back to each other? Well, the story is that Aristophanes, or however you've written the name down, not exactly sure how to pronounce it. My Greek is about as good as my Swahili and my Russian. But I'm just going to continue to say Aristophanes, and I know that's a Greek person of some description historically, and but I may have the wrong one. But I'm going to run with it. Um, the story is that they didn't communicate obviously in live time. They each recorded their observations, then they met back together. What was the shadow at your location? And whoever was at Alexandria said there was no shadow at all. The sun was directly overhead. And the pole that was at Cyan Aswan gave off a different angle. It showed a shadow of so many whatever the size was. And then from the calculations, for the point I'm getting at is that in science, one of the principles of good science is what is called replication. You need to replicate the science. You need to do it over and over and over again, because what is true on a Monday has to be true on a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Thursday, and every other day of the week. And so just because an experiment renders a result, you don't just say, well, it's done forever and ever, amen. You then have to have replication to show that what you found to be true on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that it's also true on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. What's true in January has to be true in February, March, April, May, and every other month of the year. And I wonder, I would have to imagine it's been replicated, but I've never seen anyone give an example for it. Um, OJ Malik is writing, you use the technology and information available at the time. Then, as better technology and more information comes in, you repeat it until it's confirmed, disproved, or improved. And so Koji Malik is basically reinforcing what I said about replication. An experiment needs to be replicated multiple times to ensure that it's true. If you want to know what the freezing point of water, H2O, is, you do an experiment, you measure the temperature, and you find out it freezes at zero. But you have to repeat that experiment over and over. And once it becomes established, once replication shows the same result over and over and over again, then you get to what is determined to be scientific fact. It's scientifically proven that the freezing temperature of water is 0 degrees Celsius or 32. Help me out, Koji Malik. Koji Malik is in Florida. I'm in Canada. We use the metric system mostly. I haven't used the metric system or rather the old imperial system since I was 11. Uh, Danny is writing that according to the globe math scientists give us, there should be a 330-foot difference from one end to the other, yet it's less than a foot. I don't know what you're talking about. Koji Malik is writing Fahrenheit. Yeah. It's the freezing point of in Fahrenheit. I think it's 32. It's been a while. Like I said, 12 years old. The last time I lived permanently in the United States, although I visited many times. But the reason I have respect for my flat earther friends, like Danny, when you look at his name, if you're watching the live chat, he puts in brackets FE, and the FE stands for flat earth. Danny, what I know, we have spoken once via video chat on here during a live stream. I did that with Koji Malik as well. And Danny fully embraces, he's not afraid to proclaim himself as a flat earther. And I think there are individuals who are kind of on the fence, but are leery. They don't want to promote the fact that they doubt the heliocentric model of the earth revolving around the sun. They have their doubts about it, but they don't want to talk about it because they're afraid of being mocked, ridiculed, being thought of as an idiot. And that brings me back to the COVID era. I don't know a single person, most of the people who ascribe to the flat earth model. And I think that's a bit of a poor way to frame it, to call it a flat earth. You get this idea of a flat earth and you're going to sail off the edge because most flat Earth models that I've encountered, somewhat like the thumbnail to this post, has this idea of a disc-like shaped, and it might actually be somewhat rounded, with, and then there's talk of an ice wall around the outside, that Antarctica is not a continent at the southern, on the southern pole, but it's more of an ice wall holding everything in. Uh, yes, Danny, I am on live, live chat. Yes, I just changed it. Uh, um, OJ Malik is taking things from is taking we're simpatico on this. I believe she is saying, I'm not going to use the information either way, not my fight or interest. And for the longest time, I read, yeah, whether the Earth is flat, round, spherical, or if it's shaped like a donut or a parallel or whatever. Uh, However the Earth is shaped, whether it's spherical or not, doesn't change my world. I've flown all over the place, all over North America. I've been down as far south as Panama. I've been flown out to San Diego. I've flown up to Cold Lake, Alberta. I've flown out to Fredericton, New Brunswick, New York City, down to Florida. And regardless of what the shape of the planet I live on is, it doesn't change my world. So I never gave it that much thought. But then the COVID era came along, and I came across a lot of what I will call passionate believers in this flat Earth model. That, what the heck? I mean, remember COVID? We had a lot of time on our hands. Couldn't go shopping, couldn't go out to dinner, everyone sheltering in place. I of course we hopped in our van and we went to church services in Peterborough, in Napanee, in Aylmer, Ontario, in Kitchener Waterloo, anywhere I could gather with people. But the greater majority of the population was, hunkering in their bunkers, afraid to breathe the air outside. And so there wasn't a lot to do. And so I did look at it. I did look at some of the flat Earth information out there. Um, but the thing that struck me is the world outlook of someone who believes in this. You're talking about someone who's willing to push back against a pervasive narrative, regardless of the blowback that they get, regardless of the fact that they're going to be mocked, ridiculed, derided. And those of us who didn't go along with all the COVID nonsense, quite often it was an introduction to what someone who would proclaim the flat earth model has to put up with whenever they proclaim their belief. All of a sudden I was, mocked for not getting the vaccine. Oh, are you a vaccine researcher? You're an expert. You've been doing your research sitting on the toilet with your cell phone? Oh, you're so smart. And it's like, what? I'm just reading, just doing some simple research, just trying to find out if I should be willing and have my family be willing to be injected with a substance that I really don't understand. And one that prior to COVID coming along, we'd always been told the vaccines take years to develop. You just can't rush them out. And this was a brand new platform, mRNA. They've been working on it for 20 odd years and had never come up with a single solitary, not once, a viable product for the human race. And so I was like, well, wait a minute, maybe I should do some reading on this. Maybe I'm being lied to. I was told that SARS-CoV-2 came from a bat and that it jumped to a human in a wet market. Um, and that turned out to be wrong. I was told that SARS-CoV-2 was an incredibly lethal pathogen, that it was more than 10 times as deadly as seasonal flu, and that turned out to be wrong. And now they're telling me that this vaccine will stop it. Well, could that also be wrong? And I think those who ascribe to a flat Earth, they had kind of a head start on individuals such as myself, because their worldview is one of, I'm being lied to. I'm being lied to about the very fabric of reality. So why would I believe all this nonsense about the flat Earth? Now, for what it's worth, I do have some affinity with those who ascribe to the flat Earth because I don't always accept the official narrative. I didn't accept the official narrative on 9/11 that said that Building 7, a 45-story building in the World Trade Center complex that apparently caught fire and then just imploded on itself like a perfect bullet planned demolition. That did not make sense to me. And then, so I questioned things like, wait a minute. So you're saying that Osama bin Laden from a cave in Afghanistan using flip phone style technology, cell phone technology, that he subverted the entire world's security and intelligence apparatuses all around the world and, orchestrated this event when planes blew up and left no wreckage, when a plane, somehow a fireball that completely destroyed the black boxes, but somehow the hijackers' passport survived that fireball that destroyed the black boxes, which are designed to withstand a crash. They didn't make it, but the passport did, and we can still read it. And things that make you go, am I being lied to? And likewise with Iraq's invisible weapons of mass destruction. Colin Powell, U.S. Defense Secretary, went in front of the United Nations with a presentation that includes satellite imagery and video and said, here, we can prove it. Saddam Hussein and Iraq have weapons of mass destruction. Here is the proof. And it turned out that the proof was wrong. There were no weapons of mass destruction. Go back a little bit before my time, although I was alive during the Vietnam War. I was just a kid. I was 9 when that war ended. But this whole idea of the domino theory, and if Vietnam falls to communism, then it's going to spread like wildfire. All the other countries in Southeast Asia are going to turn communist. It'll hit Singapore, Malaysia, South Korea. They're all going to go communist, communist, communist. And next thing you know, communism will be on our doorstep. That never happened. And so flat earthers, those who believe in the flat earth model, they were already used to not believing official consensus, what is presented as the consensus narrative view. Now let me read on what Danny's saying. We all become flat earthers because we try to disprove it. Why would you choose to believe in something that has you ostracized and mocked by your friends and family? Well, and this is the point I get at. And it's this tribal nature of humanity, and we like to be part of the smart crowd. Everyone wants to be part of the smart crowd. I'm smarter than them. I'm more intelligent than that guy or that group of people. And the culture, it's just part of our fallen, broken human nature. We like to think we're everything in a bag of chips. But the question I ask a lot of people is, what research have you done? You have just accepted blindly what has been handed to you. Have you done any experiments? Have you imitated what Aristophanes did in the year 300 BC? Have you studied it? Well, no, I don't have. Oh, so you've done nothing. The one most compelling piece of evidence that would lead me to um, give weight to the flat earth model is there are videos here on YouTube. You see them. And if anyone has one and can share it in the live chat, I was looking for one before I did this video, but I couldn't find one. It's hard to decide what the search term should be. But there are individuals who have taken high-powered camera lenses for video, and they've shot out, or they've looked out over a body of water like, say, Lake Ontario from one side to the other. And we are told, according to the science, that for every mile that the curvature is, I believe it's 8 inches. So you go out a mile, and it's going to be 8 inches below, and then another mile, now it's 16, another mile, now it's 24. and on and on and on. So if you go out 10 miles, there should be 80 inches. So if you're looking over a body of water and you're looking at the shoreline, the shoreline should be 6.5 feet, roughly 80 inches below the horizon. You should not be able to see the shoreline. And yet, the examples that I've seen of people doing YouTube videos on this, showing you the distance between the 2 points, you can see the shoreline perfectly. It's like you're standing right there, high powered telescopic type lens. So does that prove that the Earth is flat? The those people talk about they talk about optic refraction, and that explains why you're able to look out over the water and still see the shoreline when it's supposed to be 6.5 feet below the horizon. I don't understand the optics of it well enough. And like with the experiment that Aristophanes is reported to have conducted in the ancient world, 300 BC, I haven't replicated his study, and I myself have not been sufficiently motivated to get a video camera with a high-powered telescopic lens on it. And I haven't gone down to Lake Ontario, which is I can be down there in 15, 20 minutes. I live close to the lake here, and I haven't been sufficiently motivated to see how far out I can see. Uh, let's read what's being written. All right. Danny's writing, yes, Antarctica is I think you mean to write outer ring of our flat Earth. All water needs to be contained. It is contained by the walls of ice. We are also covered by a dome, kind of like a terranium. Uh, do you call it a terranium or a geranium? Or is that a plant? I know what you're talking about, though. It's kind of I've heard the argument before that we're in this basic geranium, terranium, whatever you want to call it, that we're covered by a dome. Found it interesting. There was that TV show called Under the Dome, and then there was the Simpsons episode, or rather, the Simpsons movie, which was about the the town of Springfield being covered with a dome, and then we get to the COVID era, and we all were put into our little domes or our little bubbles, and we weren't supposed to go outside of our domes, our little bubbles. I didn't. Danny didn't. Lots of people didn't. A lot of Americans didn't. A lot of Floridians did not. A lot of people in the Dakotas, a lot of Americans. God bless the United States of America in that regard. They push back against things. And I think it's healthier when we live in a world where individuals are not mocked for questioning official narratives or the official presented science. Um, Ultimately, as I say, I would ask Danny what he thinks about my view, back 9 years of age or so, looking in a high powered telescope. Member of the Cub Scouts in the United States, went to the house of a backyard astronomer, amateur astronomer, with a very large telescope. Like I say, sucker had to be about that big. The outer, what was being aimed, and it had the little eyepiece down to the side. It wasn't like looking through a telescope like that. It wasn't like looking through one of those spy glasses. This was a major piece of equipment. It probably cost this guy a few $1,000s. This is back in the 70s. And the fact that I was able to look at two planets, Mars and Saturn, and you could make out that they were spherical, and the moon. You could make out that it was spherical. You could see that it was round, and uh, it's just something I find curious. Uh, let's go on. So Danny is saying, as I like to tell everybody that wants to chat about flat, as I like to tell everyone that wants to chat about flat Earth, uh, don't believe a single word I say. Do your own research. And that's the thing. I've never been sufficiently motivated myself to do that research. I've watched a few videos, but that's not doing research. That's the same as just accepting blindly this experiment by Aristophanes. I've seen the video with Carl Sagan, where he explains back in 300 BC, the Greek mathematician, philosopher, great thinker, great mind, Aristophanes was able to determine the shape of the Earth by conducting this experiment at Alexandria and Cyan, or whatever the name of the other place was, separated by a distance of 500 miles or whatever the distance is. They were able to determine that because the shadow was different at each of the two locations, that the Earth had to be curved. And he was further able to calculate with remarkable accuracy the circumference of the planet Earth. And man, oh man. Anyway, uh, and I have Kojay Malik, going back to the COVID era, is stating that the SARS-CoV-2 virus mutated faster than influenza. Did it? I'm curious because the one thing is, the flu disappeared in 2020, 2021. The flu, from all reports that I've seen, basically no one got the flu in the year, I believe it's 2018. I know the number of deaths. Canada, according to Stats Canada, experienced 8,511 deaths due to seasonal flu. 8,500. So thousands of Canadians could be expected to die every year from the flu. And that was without testing everything that moves for the flu. And likewise, that was with treating people who had the flu. So people, every year, our hospitals would be war zones. There's all kinds of articles from 2017, 18, 19 about hospitals being at 150, 200% capacity. Read one article where they said every available bed in a particular downtown Toronto hospital, every single bed in the building was occupied, and that they were having to treat people in chairs because of our broken healthcare system in this country. And so that was before COVID. That's what would be the norm before COVID. They would be treating people, and there would be so many people seeking treatment that they wouldn't have enough beds for them in some cases in large urban centers. It would happen. And then COVID comes along, and what is the treatment protocol in 2020, March, April, May, for someone with COVID? Well, go home and call us if you can't breathe. Flu, they provided treatment. Fluids, I don't know, I'm not a doctor, but they would provide treatment to the point where if they didn't have a bed for you, they would provide treatment in a chair in the waiting room, in Emerge or whatever. And then fast forward to COVID, and it's go home, call us if you can't breathe anymore. How many people would have died of flu in years past if that had been the treatment protocol for flu? Because flu, as I understand it, like SARS-CoV-2, respiratory virus, and if it gets into the lungs, if it gets into one lung, that can lead to pneumonia. If it gets into both lungs, they call it double pneumonia. And when people get a severe case of double pneumonia and cannot breathe, that in rare cases, from what I understand, they would be put onto a ventilator. Ventilators were not an invention of the COVID era, they existed before for these rare cases where people would have conditions like a respiratory virus, like seasonal influenza, where infected the lungs, leading to double pneumonia, and the person couldn't breathe. But before someone would hit that point, they'd be receiving treatment, drugs or whatever. I don't know what the treatment protocol is for influenza, but the protocol for SARS-CoV-2 for COVID was nothing. doctors, if they tried to repurpose other drugs like ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine or whatever else, they were reprimanded severely. I think they could lose their license. So I wonder if the protocol for treating influenza in 2017, 18, 19 had been the same as what it was for COVID, how many more people would have died? Um, so that was, I'm trying to catch up on the chat. Danny retracted okay, that's where I left off. Mutated faster than the flu. Uh, Koji Malik is writing, if the US knew how ignorant our leaders were and how flimsy our agencies are, we would be paranoid. Our society, our world, in a large case, in a lot of cases, is based on trust, simple trust. People have to trust. And what's happening in our world right now, especially post COVID, is that trust has been, I don't know how to frame it. It's evaporated. People don't have trust. A large segment of the population does not have trust in our governments, in educational in the ivory towers of education and science. They don't trust. People do not trust anymore. And I think that, to keep this somewhat on topic, that is why you have a large segment or a significant number of people who will go so far as to doubt the very fabric of reality in terms, that's a bad way to frame it. I apologize. I don't mean to, because as I say, I have not, I've, I've been up in airplanes. I mentioned all those places I've flown, and I've also been up in a helicopter, but I've never been sufficiently high enough to be able to see the curvature of the earth. Whenever I've gone up in a plane, looking out that little crappy little window that they give you, it looks flat to me, but I have not been up high enough. No, I have watched some videos where they show. I was watching a knowing I was going to do this video. I was watching a BBC reporter who went high up into the upper atmosphere, and it appears that you can see a curvature, but who knows? I've never been. When it comes to the moon landing, I'm with on the in terms of the moon landing. Yeah, I'm skeptical as you know what. I am skeptical of the moon landing. And the biggest reason, probably, like Building 7 is kind of the smoking gun for me for the 9/11 insanity. 45-story steel frame building. None. There have been fires at steel frame buildings plenty of times. You've never seen one collapse in on itself perfectly like a planned demolition, except on 9/11. For me, the equivalent with the moon landing is what they call the Van Allen radiation belts that are said. Science says there are these radiation belts around the Earth called the Van Allen radiation belts. And they say that, anything flying through there, any life form flying through these Van Allen radiation belts, that any life form would be basically microwaved. And so, yeah, and you look at some of the footage that they show us of the moon landing, and the excuses given. Well, they wanted to give a representation. There's one that's just horrible. That looks like it was, out of Lost in Space, that 1960s sci-fi television show. But so I have serious doubts as to the moon landing, and the biggest doubt I have is, okay, why did we never go back? We haven't been back since. Probably the one way that you could get me to believe in the moon landing would be if there was an astronomer, amateur astronomer or otherwise, with a high-powered telescope that I trusted, but what I'm looking at is the moon. And if I was to see everything that got left behind by those Apollo missions, because obviously they had, the part of their craft, everything, the flag and everything has to still be there. And so show me that wreckage, let me see it firsthand myself, and then, okay, I'm all in, we went. But unless or until I see that evidence, I have serious doubts about the fact that humanity has ever been to the moon. Uh, and Danny is writing that the shape does matter. The globe in the middle of billions of galaxies puts God somewhere in there, yet the Bible says HOD, God, I think you meant to write God, typing, puts God somewhere in there. Yet the Bible says God uses earth as his footstool. God's in near. You didn't write that the best. You know, typos are a pain, especially if you're using a phone or a tablet or anything like that. Um, there is one aspect, another. I saw a representation on the, and it's a question I have. I've seen this representation of our solar system. So you have all these planets, however many there are. What is it? 9. Pluto, they can never make up their mind whether it's a planet or not. But are moving through in a circular fashion around the Milky Way, and that so our solar system itself is in motion as the Milky Way spins in a circular fashion. So we're kind of hurtling through space, as it were, in an orbit within the Milky Way. So you have an orbit within an orbit, and then the Milky Way is likely moving around the universe as well. So we're hurtling through space, and everything is moving around. And yet every winter, uh, late September, early October, I look in the southern sky down here, and I see that jerk Orion. And I say that because the constellation Orion is a winter constellation. It shows up every winter, every winter. And those 3 stars in Orion's belt that are a representation of the 3 great pyramids on the Giza Plateau, they're always in the same spot. You would think if we're hurtling through the universe like this, why is it that every night when I look at that southern sky in the winter months, I see that same constellation, and it moves, as the seasons change, as the year progresses, it moves and then it disappears, and as we come to the summer, Orion goes away, and in the opposite direction, the Great Dipper, the what do they call it? The Big Dipper, the Great Dipper, the Big Dipper appears, and that's a summer constellation. It's there. It's been there since I was a kid, and for thousands of years. As I say, that the Giza Plateau, the 3 great pyramids on the Giza Plateau, are aligned almost perfectly astronomically with. I think it is just basically an exact representation on the Earth of the 3 stars in what is called Orion's belt in the constellation of Orion. As a matter of fact, they say that the 3 shafts in the Great Pyramids from what they are refer to them as the burial chambers, from the burial chamber, what they call the burial chamber, out. There's a shaft that points out, and in each one of the 3 Great Pyramids at Giza, those 3 shafts line up perfectly and are almost like like a telescope aimed at each corresponding star in Orion's belt. It's fascinating stuff. I don't have answers for it. Uh, Ultimately, for me, Danny, in terms of you saying it does matter because, it says in the Bible that, the earth is God's footstool. God's throne is in heaven and the earth is his footstool. Um, what shape is the footstool? Can it be a rounded footstool? For me, my faith is not dependent upon the shape of the earth. It doesn't take away from the fact that God is the creator of heaven and earth. I do not believe there is life on other planets. I go to Occam's razor and I say the reason that we've never encountered and been the reason there's never been conclusive evidence that there is life on other planets is because there is no life on other planets. There is no evidence because there's none in existence. We are it. We are the pinnacle of God's creation. Going against the consensus is hard. Well, we can't ask him, but Galileo Galilei, I forget what year that was, 1500s, 1600s, whatever it was, 1400s, when he invented the telescope and determined that the earth revolved around the sun. It's the way he presented it. And the Catholic Church came and they put him under house arrest until he recanted, until he said that, because back then the belief was the earth had to be the center of the universe, and they could prove it because you take any object and things fall back to the center. So gravity, in a sense, if you believe in gravity, and some people don't, is that this proves that the earth is the center of the universe. And Galileo rocked the foundations of people's worldview back then. And the simple fact of the matter is, as far as I'm concerned, is that it bothers me that people get mocked and ridiculed for daring to simply question. And I think that's dangerous. And that is why I'm respectful for those who have the unmitigated gall to push back against the world would never advance if we just accepted everything blindly. If I accepted everything blindly, I would have gotten that COVID jab. And I thank God for the fact that I have enough wherewithal to push back and to be willing to question things. While I'm hitting the hour mark, let me remind, I'm assuming it shows 5 people watching. I'm assuming you've all subscribed, but if there's anyone who hasn't, hit that button. I want to grow. I want to grow. And I have to admit, in doing this video, part of the motivation for it was, in my head, I'm thinking, well, there are a lot of people who do believe in the flat earth. There's probably, I don't know, probably a million or more. And it's a very active online community. There are stations, there are individuals who are stars of the flat earth community. Danny may know a few names. And so I thought, well, this is a chance for me to attract some eyes to my miserable, pathetic little station with no production values. I don't have any models. Closest thing I have is, I don't have any green screen there. We got this representation of what the earth looks like, but again, this presents this nice flat, it's smooth. And this map is somewhat topographical, I think is the term. So there are ridges where the Rockies are. There are ridges here in and around where the Alps would be. There are ridges in and around Nepal and where the Himalayan mountains would be. But the ridges are about the same all over. Just gives you an idea of an area with a raised topography. But whatever the case, let's read what's being written. Uh, and Danny and I share this view 100%. He's writing, God created us and we are special. We are not an accident in the middle of nowhere. Jesus is king. I think Danny and I can recognize that even with him being, a full-blown member of the flat Earth believing society, and me not, we share that in common. I think there's a tendency on humanity to want to understand things and that we have a rush to reach the destination. We want to say, I know. And once we reached a conclusion, and I think this can equally fall on those who ascribe to flat Earth, is you got to be willing to question everything, even your own deeply held beliefs. The one thing for me that is not negotiable, one thing, is that uh, God created the heavens and the earth, that we are the pinnacle of creation, that we are a fallen, broken, sinful creature, all of us, and that God, to reconcile us to himself, a holy, perfect creator God, all knowing, all seeing, all wise, all compassionate, all loving, all everything, I am, that in order to reconcile this broken, fallen creation, that is what I am, that God took on human form. The representation is that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son to suffer a painful, humiliating, excruciating death on that cross to reconcile my broken, fallen nature. I believe that wholeheartedly with all my heart, mind, body, soul, strength. Yes. But everything else beyond that, I'm willing to question, especially in the realm of science. Um, what's Danny writing? If Saddam were still alive, let's see. Oh, I went too far. If Saddam was still alive, we wouldn't have the problems we have in the Middle East. Maybe. Who knows? Alternative universe. Who knows what the world would look like if the US had, that there's always something I've read many times that Saddam Hussein, when he invaded Kuwait, that he did it for two reasons. Number one, there was a claim that the Kuwaitis were slant drilling into Iraq, basically stealing their oil. When you drill for oil, you're supposed to go straight down. You're not supposed to go sideways or at a diagonal. But the accusation is that Kuwait was drilling sideways or at a diagonal and going and tapping into Iraqi oil fields. One. And the second claim is that when Saddam Hussein complained about Kuwait slant, they call it slant drilling, that the Kuwaiti emir or king said, "Oh, go away. I'm going to have your wives in my harem," which is something of a Middle Eastern insult. Yeah, I'm going to make your wife part of my harem. And so then Saddam Hussein resolved that he was going to invade Kuwait. The story is that he advised the US State Department and said, "Yo, I'm a client of yours. I'm part of your sphere. I'm going into Kuwait. Is that cool?" And everything I've read says that the US said, "Yeah, go ahead, fill your boots. It's not our business." And so Saddam Hussein went and invaded Kuwait. That would have been during the presidency of George H.W. Bush, who was president from 88 to 92. So it would have been late 80s, early 90s, the first Persian Gulf War. And why did the prior to that, the Iraq had been an ally of the United States. The United States had supplied armed Iraq during its war with neighboring Iran. It was a bit of a proxy war, 7, 8 year long war between Iran and Iraq. Iran was backed by the old Soviet Union, and Iraq under Saddam Hussein was backed by the United States of America. And when they claimed that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction after the war was over, the only thing they found was sarin gas. And the US already knew that Saddam Hussein had sarin gas because they had supplied it to him for the war against Iran. But that sarin gas that he had was so old, it had been stored in drums, that it was inert. It was useless. It wasn't a weapon of mass destruction anymore by the time Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. That whole situation, and during that war, that first Gulf War, I looked upon it as a trade show for the industrial military complex, because back then there were Patriot missiles The Iraqis had Scud missiles, and the Scuds they were firing at Israel. Uh, Iraq, obviously part of the Islamic world, and they started to fire Scud missiles at Iraq. This is in the days before the Iron Dome, before David's shield or David's sling, the defense systems that Israel has to shoot down rockets, drones, missiles. So I think it was Lockheed Martin had this Patriot missile, and they were on all the newscasts at the time showing this Patriot missile taking out these Scuds that were coming in from Iraq that were aimed at Israel. And all of a sudden, now countries all around the world started to buy Patriot missiles. And I thought, geez, this is like a trade show for the for the arms industry. Uh, but who knows what would happen if Saddam Hussein was still alive? Uh, as I say, it's an alternative universe, and I always wondered why they didn't take him out the first time. Why did they leave him in place? And then ultimately, we had 9/11, and then that was used as justification to go into Iraq a second time, and that time they actually went and took him out, their former client, their former part of Pax Americana. I like what Koji Malik writes. She writes, "I'm interested in Arctic worms, but not enough to research." Yeah, and I think that hits a lot of us. We get hit with little bits of information. We will go, "Well, that sounds interesting. Worms in the Arctic? What about that? I can't bother." Yeah. And this is guilty universal. Well, maybe not universal, but certainly with me, is there lots of things that come up that are interesting to us, but I'm going to say in my own case, I'm just too lazy. There isn't enough time in the day to research and find out about everything you want to know about. Let's see what's being written. Uh, Danny's writing, we have shots over 700 mics. I'm not sure what that means. We have shots over 700 miles away of the Earth. Okay, I'm assuming that's what you mean. Koji Malik is writing that the flu vaccine changes every year. Um, and then she goes on to write, COVID vaccines will probably be more vaccines in a year, not just one. But I only took one COVID vaccine. Dr. Campbell, John Campbell, I think that's his first name, Dr. John Campbell. Everyone here knows who I'm talking about. British nurse practitioner and a former professor of nursing, as I understand it. That's where he got his PhD, was in the dissemination of teaching materials digitally for, educating nursing students. He's not a medical doctor, but he has a PhD in disseminating information over the internet. At any rate, and a former nurse practitioner. He was citing a study that was done at the Cleveland Clinic that talked about the flu vaccine, the most recent flu vaccine. And as I recall, don't take my word for this, but the study that he was commenting on said that in the most recent flu season, those who got the flu shot were more likely, 25% roughly, more than 25%, but in and around 25% more likely to get the flu than those who didn't get the shot. I didn't get the flu this year. I also didn't get the flu shot. So, um, the one thing is, I've never had a flu shot, never once. And I guess throughout my 20s, when you're in your 20s, you don't worry about it. As I got up into my 30s, there was a very bad flu season. They were highly recommending, I think it was like H1N1 or whatever. There was a really bad flu one year, sometime around 2005 or 2006. Very bad flu going around. And the government of Ontario, provincial government of Ontario, like a US state, tried to mandate that everyone working as an EMT, like paramedics and nurses, that they be obligated, that they be forced to get the shot in order to be employed. And their unions fought back against it. Got a lot of press back then. Again, this is 20 odd years ago, 2005, 2006. And was paying attention to the news at the time, and I'm like, wait a minute, because I was thinking maybe I should get the flu shot. I don't know. And then I was reading in the paper back then when you had a physical newspaper, I was reading about it, and their unions, the paramedic union, the nurses union, was pushing back and going, no, we don't want to be forced to get this shot. And I started to ask myself, well, wait a minute, if people working in the medical field, paramedics and nurses, if they don't want to get the shot, or if they don't want to be forced to, I mean, if everything's great, they'd all want to get it anyway, but it doesn't seem they all want to get it. And one of the points they made is that the doctors were not being forced to get it, so why should they be? And ultimately, they ended up going to court because the Ministry of Health in Ontario tried to mandate it. They launched a court action against that law or that rule, and they won. They were not forced to get the flu shot that year or any year since. And that was kind of maybe the genesis of my in terms of medical science. I started to go, oh, wait a minute. And I've never had a flu shot. I never had one before that, and I certainly never had it since. And it made it easier for me when the COVID vaccine came out. I was like, how many months did it take you to get this thing developed? Using a platform that's never been used before, mRNA, messenger RNA, a lipid nanoparticle with instructions telling my body how to create a toxic spike protein? I don't understand this very well. Do I really want to be part of the, first population of humans to ever get an mRNA vaccine? Nope. Obviously. Koji Malik, Danny is writing, the dome is referred to as the firmament. Yet a lot of Christians, there are a lot of Bible-believing Christians who profess to believe in this flat earth. To me, it doesn't matter whether the earth is flat, round, or donut-shaped. Danny's writing, everything you saw in the telescope was within the firmament. Aha. So he's of the opinion that what I was looking at when I looked through that telescope, 1975, 9 years of age, amateur astronomer in a backyard somewhere, that Danny's of the opinion that when I saw Mars and Saturn and the moon, that they are contained within this firmament, this dome. All right. Koji Malik is writing, people say with HIV did well in my nursing home. I noticed early on, probably due to taking antibiotic retrovirals. There were people in a nursing home with HIV. Wow. Anyway, Koji Malik is writing Psalm 146, verse 3. Put not your trust in princes, nor in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. Let's check that out. Because I like to always have my Bible nearby. Psalm 146. Mine is the English Standard Revised, and I know there are 150 psalms, so it's right near the end. 146, verse 3. Put not your trust in princes, in a son of man, in a son of man. Yeah. Interesting, because you write it as put your trust in princes, nor in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. However, the translation that I have, definitive article changes from, it's not a definitive article. It's not the. It says, put not your trust in princes, in a Son of Man, in whom there is no hope. Put your trust not in a Son of Man, but I would say put your trust into the Son of Man. And the Son of Man is Jesus. And Danny is sharing an opinion. They needed an excuse to get everyone to. I look at everything that went on during the COVID era. and the lies that started from the very beginning. The first lie being that a virus that originate the origin story. This idea that it came from a bat jumping to a human in a wet market in Wuhan, China. That was the first lie. There were so many, though. What was another lie? The lie that this virus, that it was more than 10 times worse than seasonal flu or influenza. I regard that. Now, don't take my word for it. I've got to be careful here. But that was based on videos. Most people seem to believe that lie based on video coverage that they were seeing from China and other parts of the world. Video images. To me, those video images are like the Gulf of Tonkin incident that was used to justify the Vietnam War and killing 50,000 American servicemen. Look, it's there on TV. It's got to be true. Communist dictatorial China is being so nice and showing us this video image of people getting sick and dying. I never saw those videos. And that's one of the joys of not having television in the house, not having a cable or satellite subscription. It makes it easier not to be programmed. Still, not a, but it can still happen to me. I can still be programmed, and I have to push back as much as I can. I'm enjoying tonight's chat, even though it's all over the place. I'm having fun with this tonight. I went to bed. I worked until 3 p.m. Did my shopping, then came home, had dinner and everything, then crashed out. And that's why the live stream is so late right now, is because I said, I'll do the live stream when I wake up after my nap. Danny, yeah, everything for me, that was a psychological operation on steroids, a black op, psyop. Uh, and then Danny said, black sheep are not guinea pigs. We didn't go along. I should be dead. I survived the winter of death, and then the second winter of death. When I got COVID, and I'm convinced it was probably COVID. Whatever. I know some people say viruses don't exist. I think they do. I had chicken pox as a kid. I had it, and how did I get it? There were kids around me with a bunch of spots on. I was playing with them, and then I got it. And then my sister got it. My brother got it. We all got chicken pox. So viruses, bugs go through the house. When in February of 2022, my youngest, turning 12 now, but this is 2022, so this is 3 years ago. So I guess he was 9 years of age. He came down with it on a Thursday night. Fever, sick. Okay. He got it, then immediately went to me the next day. Aches, pains, low grade headache, dry, non-productive cough, low grade fever, chills, couldn't get warm. And it broke that night. By Saturday morning, I was feeling better, still a little under the weather. By Sunday, I was pretty much 100%. By Monday, right as rain. I mean, I've had worse colds, and that was it. That was all COVID was to me. And the reason I'm convinced it was COVID, not because of a test. I didn't trust I never had a PCR, polymer chain reaction, nasal colonoscopy, applicator up and touching your brain. Never had that. But and I never took a rapid test either. Never did one of the saliva tests. No testing at all for this guy. But I had all the symptoms, and they were saying in the press, and hey, they were saying that conjunctivitis, pink eye, was a common rebound, that after getting COVID, a lot of people were experiencing pink eye. And then sure enough, I got pink eye. I got it one eye, then it went to the other, then it went back to the original eye, and that lasted about 2 weeks. And that came right after I'd gotten sick with whatever I had. So I'm like, okay, I'll call it COVID. Whatever. It was nothing burger. Uh, let's see what Coach Malik is writing. I hate it when I jump too far ahead. Like, Hol- uh, I'm having trouble reading the word that you're using, politicism or whatever, depending on how close or far you are, impacts what you see, like the trees in the forest or the forest and not the trees. Yeah. If you're too far away, all you see is one giant. There's a stand of trees near a retention pond where I live, and there's a stand of trees that when they're in bloom, I guess, when they're in full leaf, it looks like one big tree. It's obscured that you're looking at about a dozen, 20, 15, 20 trees. And if you get too far away, it just looks like one big tree. I think that's what Coach Malik is saying. Good point. Uh, oh, and Danny's given me something to look up. And I think this has to do with the experiment where you're looking out over a body of water and 10 or so miles or maybe more when the shoreline should be below the horizon because of the curvature of the earth, 8 inches per mile. Well, you shouldn't be able to see the shoreline. So he's telling me to look up Nikon. I guess that's the camera or lens. Nikon P900, and I guess Rob Sikba is probably the creator of the video. I will look that up. I was looking for it. Danny's writing that's with respect to the moon landing. There's a video that circulates now that purports to be an elderly Stanley Kubrick admitting that he was engaged by NASA, by the U.S. government, to produce the moon landing, kind of like Wag the Dog, where they faked up a war. If you want to see an amazing movie, check it out. Wag the Dog, Robert De Niro, Donald, Robert De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, Woody Harrelson, Dennis Leary, Willie Nelson, I think Anne Hesh, whole host of like Oscar caliber actors, amazing actors. Wag the Dog, great movie, where they produce a fake war. And there's a video that circulates that says that it's Stanley Kubrick. I'm not 100% sure it is. There's a tendency amongst those who go all in on a theory that you want everyone to agree with you. You want everyone to believe what you believe. You want confirmation bias. See, I must be right. I talked about this the other night. When you buy a new car, everyone who's ever bought a car, I'm convinced this is universal. As soon as you buy the car, immediately afterward, you start noticing the same make and model everywhere. Whereas before you bought it, you never took note of it. It was out there, but you never noticed it. Now you go and you buy yourself a Subaru Outlander or whatever. Oh, there's another Subaru Outlander. There's another one. There's another one. I made the right choice. And so I think there can be a tendency for people to want wider acceptance of their view. And so the thought that someone could fake a video of having someone purporting to be Stanley Kubrick, I don't dismiss that as a possibility. I think it's possible. But anyway, did Stanley Kubrick produce the moon landing? I have my doubts that it took place. Serious doubts. And the biggest doubt is, they tell us these Van Allen radiation belts, are outside our upper atmosphere and that you can't travel through them without being microwaved. So how did they do it? And why haven't we been back? Koji Malik is writing, the narcissism of man to assume we are the pinnacle, better than angels. God didn't create other planets or whatever. Well, like I say, I look at this creation. And, large brain, opposing thumb, incredible adaptability. I do think we are the pinnacle of creation on this earth. Now, why don't I believe there are creatures elsewhere? But we are subordinate to God. That's the whole concept of the fall, with as recorded in Genesis in the opening chapters 1 and 2 of the Bible. We aspire to, talk about the narcissism. We're not happy being subordinate to God. We want to be gods ourselves. We want to decide what is right and what is wrong. We want to be in control, masters of the fabric of reality. And that is the arrogance and narcissism of God, to think that we, as the creature, that we have, that we are superior to He that or that which created us. Humility, is part. We are to humble ourselves before God. That's my life verse, Luke 14:11. All who exalt themselves will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Got to recognize we are not everything in a bag of chips. God is everything in a bag of chips. He created everything. Read the book of Job. Were you here when I laid the foundations of the earth? Getting it back to flat earth. That's one of the verses that those who ascribe to flat earth will cite. Were you here when I laid the foundations of the earth? Well, if it has foundations, it's not just a ball floating through space. Uh, in a fashion, I am anxious to know at the end of the day. I don't think we know everything. I've said on this channel before, we know less. We know less about what the ground below our feet than we know about the sky above us. We've never gotten through the mantle of the earth. We've talked about that super hole that the old Soviet Union dug near the Finnish border that went down, I don't know how many thousand feet it was, and eventually had to stop because our understanding of the ground beneath our feet was insufficient. It was hotter than they thought it was going to be. And the hole had to be shut down because the drill bits that they were using to drill through the earth, and they were hoping to pierce the crust so we could find out definitively what is down there. The drill bits were melting. And, this is a question I have. It's so damn hot down below under our feet that when we go down too far, the drill bits melt. And I wonder how much of our weather is impacted by what's below our feet as opposed to that yellow sun. Is the sun the main driving force of our weather and our climate, or is it something underneath us? We don't know. We've never been down there. These are questions that I have. Koji Malik goes on to say, when I talk or chastise one of my sons, I don't discuss my other two sons. God don't have to discuss his other creations with us. Interesting way of looking at things. We are to live in community. Trying to think if I have anything, for me, the biggest evidence that there is no life on other planets is the fact that there's no evidence. There's no evidence to the evidence of is all at best is circumstantial. People look at the pyramids and they say, well, no way a primitive Stone Age peoples could have built the pyramids. And so that it had to have been alien intelligence that came down to Earth and built the pyramids and the Nazca lines down in Peru, and the Machu Picchu in Peru, and all these things, are proof. But it's not proof. It's just circumstantial evidence. There are alternative theories as well, and I happen to ascribe to the belief, I can't prove it, that there was a pre-flood or pre-deluge civilization that reached amazing technological heights, and that you read the account as it's written in the Bible, the ocean, the fountains of the deep burst forth. And scientists have told us, are they right or not? They say that below the Earth's crust, that there are oceans of water greater than all the water in the world's oceans, that there's more water below the surface of the earth. There's more water below than there is above. Now, is that true or not? I don't know. We can't seem to get through the mantle. We can't prove it. And how can all that water exist if it's so damn hot down there? So many questions, so few answers. Uh, and the thing that when God talks to us, the thought that occurred to me with respect to Koje Malik's about, she's saying, she has 3 kids. Uh, and if one does wrong, she doesn't say, why can't you be like your brothers? Why can't you be good like them? Well, in terms of the Christian narrative, the biblical worldview is that we're all broken, fallen sinners, and that even our greatest, most righteous, all our good works to God, they're but nothing but filthy rags. There's not one of us who is righteous, not one, save for God Himself, when He took on human form in the person of Jesus Christ. We're all broken, fallen, and all our good deeds are but dirty little rags thrown before Him. That's as written in the book of Isaiah. And Danny is saying, is Polaris the North Star? Danny says that Polaris has been sitting in the same spot for 6,000 years. I'm assuming Polaris is the North Star. And uh, my knowledge of astronomy is not good enough. And Danny is of the belief that gravity is a theory and that it's about buoyancy and density. And Danny's asking everyone to give me a thumb. I've already got 7. Thank you, guys. And I'm going to wrap up pretty soon because I've gone on over an hour and a half. And Danny says that over 2 million people in Brazil, which has a large population, it's got to be 150, 200 million. It's a large population country. Danny says that over 2 million people in Brazil believe in flat Earth. I would imagine, it's millions of people around the world and probably millions of people in the Western developed world. And Danny says that under that globe, there's a sticker that says not for educational purposes. Is there? Mine doesn't have a sticker. Mine does not have a sticker. There's all kinds of questions out there. There's a map, I think it's called the Piers-Reese map, that predates exploration of that place, Antarctica. And it's like from the 1600s, and apparently it was written based on after the Spanish had gone into South America and encountered the Mayan, the Aztec, the Inca. And they came up with this map, the Piers-Reese map, that sticks out in my mind. And it showed this southern continent, this southern landmass. I don't know what name it was given by the Inca, Aztec, Maya people, probably the Inca or Aztec. But it was an unknown landmass. And then they showed that the outline of what they have, because Antarctica is covered by ice. After geothermal imaging and whatever, after modern technology was able to determine the landmass under the ice, they found out that this Piers-Reese map from hundreds of years ago, before that technology existed, that, wow, it's a representation of what exists below the ice. How in the heck did these Aztec or Inca, these ancient peoples, how did they know it? Things that make you go, Um, let's see. Koji Malik is right. Men disrespect women, but get offended about their woman, aka harem, the male ego of it all. Getting back to what I said about Saddam Hussein and the Emir king of uh, Danny's then writing, Flat Earth brought a sheep lost for over 30 years home to my shepherd. God uses many different ways to bring us home. My own testimony has to do with the manure, fertilizer. God poured a lot of fertilizer on me when I was in and around when I was turning 40. Uh, and I already wrote that, and that Rob Sibka, that's Chicago. I didn't see that before. I didn't see Chicago. Code J. Malik is writing, doctors are generally stereotyped as men. True. Nurses are women. True. The world likes to boss women, not so much men. There's a joke I like to tell. It's not a joke, it's a riddle. I talk about the fact that a man and his son are traveling in a car and they're in a horrific car accident, and they're each taken in separate ambulances to two different hospitals. And they have to be operated on. And the child is taken into the operating room, and the doctor looks down at the patient and pulls back and says, I can't operate on this child. And the nurse says, why not? And the doctor says, this child is my son. And then you ask, how is that possible? And the reason is because the doctor is the child's mother. And you'll be amazed at how many people go, well, wait, did the father come? No, no, father's at a different hospital. And they can't wrap their head around. It's just a default position. People assume doctors are men. And Koj Malik is writing that I can't see Danny's comments. Does Danny have me blocked? Check and see whether you are on live chat or top chat, Koj Malik. I don't think he has you blocked. But Danny, if you could answer that, I don't think you have an issue with Koj Malik at all. She's awesome, as are you. Danny's writing Psalm 146:3 of the King James Version, KJV, put not your trust in princes, nor in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. So, definitive article or not, getting back to Psalm 146, verse 3. And my version, which is English Standard Revised, put not your trust in princes, in a Son of Man. So not a definitive article. Danny hasn't had TV in over 10 years. Same here. Same here. Danny's talking about chickenpox parties. Yeah, they used to have those back in the day. One kid would get chickenpox and, hey, have them all over. My kid's got chickenpox. Everyone come to the house. Let's get it over with. There's a great old episode of the Brady Bunch from like 1969 where Peter, the middle boy child, comes home with measles. And then the kids are all together, all six of them are up in one of their bedrooms. And I think they had one bedroom for the boys, one for the girls. They're all together playing Monopoly or some board game. And they're like, measles is great. No school. And you don't feel too bad. And that's the way it was represented in the mainstream television. And now, then they show other, drama type series. There's a video that circulates around comparing the way measles was treated back in my era, it was late 60s. Yeah, big deal, measles, no big deal. And now it's like, oh my God, we got a measles outbreak. And it's like, was for long. I was reading a book by a guy named J.D. Fitzgerald called The Great Brain, childhood books that I started reading when I was in grade 4, 5, 6. The Great Brain, The Great Brain Returns, The Great Brain Goes to the Academy, whole series of books that this author wrote, roughly turn of the century American West. And there are three boys, Sven, John, and Tom Fitzgerald. And when one would get a disease, when one got a virus or chickenpox, measles, mumps, they immediately would put all three boys into the same bed so that they all got it all at the same time. And they were referred to as childhood diseases. And the question I have is, obviously I'm not going to say there was never complications, that someone didn't get encephalitis or something. I'm sure it happened back then too, in very, very rare cases. And what they tell us about the vaccines that they use to combat these what used to be called childhood diseases is they say, well, yes, there can be adverse reactions. There can be adverse health events resulting from the inoculation, but they're very, very, very rare. So if, severe cases of measles are very, very, very rare, I think you can see where I'm going. Eat Me's right. Oh, Eat Me's shown up from Montreal. Danny's also from Montreal. South Park, you spit in my mouth and I'll spit in yours. Chickenpox game. I never saw that one. And Danny's saying that if 1/3 of the angels who fell to earth when there was that war in heaven, that and then therein produced the Nephilim, that 2/3 are left in heaven. I'm going to leave that there. Bonsoir, Eat Me. Bonsoir, Danny. Sojourner Dynamis is here, all the way from the Netherlands. And I appreciate your comment on my South African video that I did yesterday. Such a horrible situation going on there. And it's 7 a.m. where Thomas is. Sojourner Dynamis's name is Thomas. And I hate it when this happens. It jumps. And man, there's so much being written. And Thomas is only here for a few minutes. He's off to a gym competition. No worries. Good to have you dropping by. I always appreciate your comments. I know you're on you're 7-8 hours ahead. But Thomas is saying life on another planet presupposes that life just happens. But I believe God intently created Earth for life and created the life thereon. Amen, brother. I like that. I like the way you frame that. Sojourner is saying hi to Danny. And then Koji Malik is writing that oxygen was discovered or confirmed to be in the air in 1772. That's a good way of putting it. It's like Columbus didn't discover America. He confirmed its existence to the Europeans. So oxygen has always been around, but it was identified 1772, but humans were breathing before then. The narcissism of man to think that things don't exist until man finds it is a discovery. Well, it's still a discovery. Doesn't, you're discovering it for your first self, for yourself. I was, how old was I when I discovered that little button on your toaster for how brown or how dark you want your toast? I used to think that's what it was. It was a dial of toastiness. It's just a timer. That's all it is. It's just a timer. How long? It doesn't adjust when you turn the toaster on, whether you got it on light or dark. It's just all that little knob is, all that little dial or that little lever is a timer. I discovered that now for myself. Sojourner is saying buoyancy is based on gravity. In 0G, it all becomes bubbles. And then Danny says that the map we use is the Gleason's map. It's the same one the U.S. Geological Surveyors use. I'm asking, is that the map used by flat Earth model individuals who ascribe to flat Earth? I know that you have the map of, and I guess that 100 probably means yes. I guess that map that you see of the UN representation as the UN logo, that I think I don't have it available to me right now, but it kind of has the North Pole at the center and everything around it. I think that's also what they use. Sojourner is writing cartography, which is the making of maps, was possible back then, but clearly the pole was not covered by ice back then. Yeah, cartography was around, but we hadn't been down to Antarctica. We hadn't visited it yet. And we certainly could not have known what the landmass underneath the ice looked like, but they did. And I said Skba. It's Skiba, Skiba. That's for that video of a guy using a camera shooting out over water. And Danny's saying that he did actually accidentally block Koj Malik and can't find how to unblock her. Oh, that stinks because she writes some amazing things like yourself. I would ask you go into your settings and see if you can find out. Go to participants, go up to the live chat button, hit the three dots, and see if you can unblock her by hitting participants. Maybe that's a way you can do it. And I can see how you could do that accidentally. It can happen. And Amy is saying also what I said, you got to have it on top chat. You'll miss out on some messages, but that's not the thing. Sojourner Dynamis says, makes one wonder why RFK is promoting the MMR jab. Yeah. I genuinely think in the case of RFK, I think his sensibilities are similar to my own. RFK is aware of the fact of people's biases. People have biases, and he knows that if he comes out too harsh against something, that he's going to lose half the room. That immediately half the people there are just going to, more than half are just going to say, "Oh, you're an idiot, get away." And yeah, if you want to win hearts and minds, you can't do it by shock therapy. It's got to be an incremental. And so that's what I genuinely think, Thomas. Why is he promoting it? Why does he promote different things that he's seen? He's sucking and blowing. He seems to be against it, but he seems to be for it. Why this dance? And I think that's the reason. I think he recognizes that he when you want to win hearts and minds, you don't do it by shock. For some people can't open their eyes that quickly all at once. That's all I'll say. Danny's writing in 2025, it's all about fear. Fear this, fear that, fear everything. Read a great book by the author Michael Crichton, guy who wrote Jurassic Park, but he wrote a lot of other novels as well. Very sharp guy. Wrote a book called State of Fear. And it's something I think a great book. And Sojourner Didymus is making the point to Koj Malik to not confuse invention and discovery. You can invent things, what you discover doesn't mean it didn't exist before. Danny says, yes, the Gleasons is the one that flat earthers use. The UN flag is a flat earth flag. And everyone, Coach Malik said, welcome back. Look, I've gone on nearly 2 hours. That's more than enough. We've bled into the 25th, Sunday morning, the Lord's Day for some it's Saturday. There's a passage in, I think it's in Romans. It's one of Paul's letters where he talks about, whatever day you pick, honor it, and that's the Lord's day. Some choose one day over another. Anyway, that's the end of my video. I've droned on long enough. So I now have a video out about flat Earth. Probably be the last one, although I may reference it again, and I may do another one. Who knows? God bless. I'll end it off. May the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you, whether you believe in a flat or round earth. And may the Lord grant you peace. So have a blessed day, everyone. You as well, Sojourner. I like that. Don't anyone ever become a Gordonite, okay? I don't want followers. I'm not qualified. I'm not worthy. All right. Great seeing you all. I'll end it with a British accent for fun. And Tuesday, big day. That's when King Charles will be delivering the speech from the throne. And I'm here to tell you there is only one throne. It's the throne in heaven. And but I will be paying attention because I do want to hear what Chuck has to say. I've already done a video with channeling my inner monarch and elucidating what I think Chuck will be talking about. And it'll be interesting to check back against it. Will I get anything bang on the money? Maybe maybe I will have, maybe that virus, if I nail something, who knows, that could blow up. It occurred to me when I did it. And Sojourner Didymus, Charles has no power but the power he has been given from above. God is in control. Anyway, God bless all, and we'll see you again soon. All right, good night, or good morning, or good afternoon.